It is the 19th of February. I just actually came walking from the Daily Bread Food Bank. I actually was spoken to by Mr. Jeffrey Wong, and I say Mr. only because that's his formal name. Jeffrey Wong had given me a trespass warning that's dated February the 2nd that said to inform under the Trespass to Property Act that due to false allegations, personal attacks, threatening comments, from this day forward you are hereby notified and advised not to enter the building or lands a Daily Bread Food Bank under any circumstances. For food assistance, please visit the John Howard Society of Toronto. I think I spoke about this before. And then I was given some other places to go to drop in or to be an appointment, which I can't make an appointment because I'm a registered user over at Daily Bread Food Bank. So Jeffrey Wong said to me, you've been trespassed. And first of all, I want to make it very clear that I was the one who launched the internal investigation. The reason being is because there were two volunteers one volunteer was being verbally abusive and speaking profanity at me and throwing roasting pans at me. And two volunteers were being increasingly abusive, and they are actually members of the enemy's camp. All three of them are actually. And so the allegations that Jeff is talking about is because Sandra Long had given him $280,000. In fact, Sandra Long had been on the property today and then saw the police and then left. I saw her driving in. Also, Murray Smith had contacted the police and stated that I was going to be causing some problems on the Daily Bread Food Bank property this morning and that they should be aware of that. Sandra Long had glasses, had a brown wig like mine. Sandra Long was wearing a lavender coat. Sandra Long was wearing Anne Klein dress pants like I have. They're old, they're like 7-8 years old. I wear them around the house or I wear them to go out periodically. And Sandra Long was wearing a pair of boots like I have. They're actually they're long leather boots, just black leather boots, plain, with a zipper up the side and a buckle at the top. I bought them off of Amazon, but I can no longer wear them because my calf muscles are so big now. And also, Murray Smith had contacted them and said that I was living in a shelter in Mississauga. And Jeffrey Wong, when Jeffrey Wong came out and I spoke to him and I said, I don't want to speak to you, Jeff. I'm not a volunteer any longer. I'm a client. Jeffrey Wong had spoken 3 times that it was fine for me to use the Daily Bread Food Bank. Sandra Long has an actuality in her quest. Like, she went up to San Remo Bakery, like she assaulted 2 people, one at St. Lawrence Market and one over at the Charest Gardens Mall, who was hospitalized, this one individual, and had to spend the night and was discharged. And they're laying charges as well. Sandra Long is doing this in order to get me out of Etobicoke, because what she's trying to do is she's getting a lot of money for this. Actually, it's not enough that I can get out of the church, obviously, but they wanted me out of Daily Bread. So they used people like Alison Gibbons and Sandra Long, who stole desserts. And we all know about what I spoke about. And I think that may be what they're talking about, false allegations. Jeffrey Wong changes his stories repeatedly. Apparently now he's saying, well, it was because she was a volunteer and she came against me, and that's what he's telling the police. She didn't like me and I didn't like the way she acted, and she never came in to see the volunteers, and she never spoke to the volunteer coordinator, and she never did anything like that. She just came and go. She was here all the time. And you see, when I spoke to Jeffrey Wong about how he was taking away my community, that's exactly what they like to do. The enemy likes to alienate. The enemy likes to abuse. The enemy they love secrecy. The enemy will, they thrive on secrecy. but because of Sandra Long and her and Jonas Regato, and putting cameras around and cameras on my other glasses and here in my hearing aids, microphones in my hearing aids, and because of that, it backfired. It backfired because I found out the truth. Because of my former relationship with Duncan Smith, I got a lot of information. I have a lot of information about Duncan's home life, about his relationship with Kate, about his relationship with his children, about his relationship with his 3 daughters, Jessica, Nathania, and Abigail, about his relationship with his granddaughter, Abigail, his new granddaughter, about his relationship with his son-in-law, about his relationships at his church, about his relationships with his companions he has now, his former companions, about who he loves, about who he doesn't love, about how he acts, about how he doesn't act, about his cancer, about his surgeries, about Kate Daniel Smith, about her medical issues, and I have a lot of information. I have a lot of information about Murray Smith and his marriage, about Murray Smith and his daughter, about Murray Smith and his drug addictions, about Murray Smith and his psychiatric issues, about Murray Smith and his mental wellness stays in mental wellness centers, and about how their family. I know a lot about their family, about their parents. I know about I know everything. And that's Sandra Long's fault. Sandra Long is trying to save Grace. You see, if Sandra Long gets me out of Etobicoke, where would you put me? St. Catharines. I go back to St. Catharines, I have nothing there. The more furniture I get, the more benefits I receive from the city of Toronto, the more established I get. And I was established as a Daily Bread Food Bank. I had 698 hours. To get a position there, it's 750 to get a position. Or a year at the food bank. I think they base it on a year at the food bank volunteering consistently in a department, and or 750 hours, which was changed. First it was like 350, then it was 500, then it was 700, and then it was 750. So I have 698. So that's that. So I was established in that. Yes, I was taken out. I didn't have a residence for the majority of the summer. I was living at 62 Judson Street, renting a room, and then I was taken out of there, and I stayed with my friend up in North York, and then I was staying in the airport for 2 weeks in Terminal 1 in the departure lounge, and then I was asked to leave there, walked off by police, not charged, never charged with anything, just walked off. I don't know how many people without addresses who do not and cannot access the shelters or safe havens and stay at that airport, like realistically speaking, and security lets them, and the police know. So that's the thing, as long as they don't cause any trouble, the police allow it. So I was walked off. I was never charged, and in 5-degree heat, mind you. And then I ended up at my friend's place at Scarborough, and I stayed there for about, I think, almost a week, helping them pack, helping over with the kids, everything with my Nigerian family, in which Jonas Regato has actually threatened the young girls twice. So I stayed with them, and then I went from there to an Airbnb in Mississauga. I stayed at the Airbnb for about 3 weeks, and then that was at the point where I ended up in the shelter. I ended up in a hospital overnight because they thought I had a blood clot in my leg, and then I ended up in a shelter for 3 weeks on Britannia. I think it's called, I'm gonna get it wrong, but it's called the Open Hands or Hands of Heart or something on Britannia. It's the most wonderful place. It's run actually by the Islamic community or a Muslim community. I could get it wrong. And I'm sorry. And so obviously there's police officers in there, and they allow it's all women's shelter, and then on the other side it's for teenage girls, and so I mean, it's a wonderful place. I was able to store all of my things there, and I was able to have a locker. So it gave me the ability to take the bus and then go down to Renfrew Transway Station, end up at Kipling, end up at Islington, and then take the bus over to Daily Bread Food Bank. So the 3 weeks that I was there in July, they allowed me to obviously go, because you have to be out of the shelter from, like, I think it was 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. You had to be out by 7 o'clock in the morning, maybe earlier, and you couldn't get back until 7 at night. Yeah, it's that 12-hour block, 7 in the morning till 7 at night. But all your things are there, and you can take what you need for the day, right? So that's what I would do. Weekends are the hardest. I recognize that, and on the weekends I was looking for some place to go. So that is when I found a roomies.ca, where I used to live upstairs in this building with my former roommate. And my former roommate feels like I broke a contract. Well, no, I didn't break a contract. The reality of what happened is that, and I think I've spoken about this before in my just previous what do you call it, postings, that she gave me the notice 3 days after I paid my rent, and then she gave me the notice 60-day notice till April the 4th, on or before April the 4th. So on or before April the 4th, I prayed about it. Our Heavenly Father told me, contact the superintendent and asked if there was anything coming up. That day, the owner came, showed me this place. I gave him 2 days. I figured it out. Here I am. I moved in on the 9th of February. He started charging me on the 15th, and I received a moving cost, $350, and I bought myself my brand new $120 chaise. That was $600. I'm sorry, that was the most exciting thing, a piece of furniture I've ever owned. And so that's what I did. Now, Jeffrey Wong, please follow me home. I don't mind the police following me. When I did speak to the police this morning, and they gave me this paperwork and then some things that Jeffrey Wong had kindly run off for me. That he kindly went off about drop-ins and about how to access food. I'm being very sarcastic. How he did that. And I said to the police officer, I said, okay, I had no knowledge of this. I was the one who launched the internal investigation. I went to the head of the kitchen, and I went to Charles Durgal, who is the supervising head of the kitchen, and I said to him about I was being bullied, I was being harassed, I had people like scream profanity at me, and I guess they felt like I was taking over. Well, it turns out this. People who I thought were my friends in Daily Bread Food Bank in there, they were lying. Certain people were being paid to be my friends from people outside of Daily Bread. And I'm going to say it, by my cousins and by my late biological mother, Marie. So that's what, and I say late because she left this earth on, I think when it was February the 9th, earlier than that, like in the earlier part of February. I was notified on February the 9th that she left this earth. It was a very, and I don't want to invoke a spirit of horror, but it was a very horrific leaving of this earth, as they are with the people who are in the enemy's camp and part of the organization. Apparently I found this out, that what had happened and I believe the person who told me this is telling me the exact truth, because he heard it strictly from the police. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But she was emancipated. She did have breast cancer. Her legs and her arms were literally stripped of her skin down to the bone. And she had hands, but what had happened is someone had actually, she was a victim of torture. So being a victim of torture, as a result of what had happened, they had actually put skin on her wrists and her ankles, and she had skin on her face, and she had skin on her, they had shaved her head, and she had skin on her neck. And that was the only place where she had skin. She was a victim of torture. What they did when they found her, the individuals who found her, they wrapped her up in a blanket, and they basically let her alone, because she was no longer going to survive. and that I received notification that she was being cremated, and not obviously I'm not going to go to the funeral because my entire family are Satanists, so obviously I'm not going to go to the funeral. Um, so I guess they've been showing up around this area looking for me. But anyway, that's that's that. Okay, so they were getting paid, so I found out that. So when I spoke to the police officers and when I told Jeffrey Wong, he said, I don't want to go down that road. I said, call them. Call the police officers. I personally do not, I can't register to my knowledge. And when I spoke to the police officers about this, I said, I can't register at other food banks because of where I live and because of the geographical area of where I live. If you go on the link to feed, I put in my address and it says 191 New Toronto Street. You see, Jeffrey Wong and Sandra Long are working together, along with Alison Gibbons, are working together in order to get me out of Daily Bread, which would get me, oh, maybe I should go back to St. Catharines. Everything would be so much better because they're continuing their quest, like Jonas Gato, Melanie, Sandra Long, everybody. And I can't believe Murray Smith called, realistically speaking. So anyway, so they're getting me. So that's what's his quest. I told the police, I said, I don't want to commit the fraud. And then I said to the police officers, because the police said, well, it's up to them, really, if they don't want you in their building. I said, no, it is one person. They are stopping production, to my knowledge. They're closing the kitchen. He's not allowed in the kitchen. They're closing the kitchen. I don't know how long they're going to stop production for. I said to, it is one person, and it is Jeffrey Wong, who's getting a lot of money to do this from Sandra Long. So what's going on as well is when I said to the police officer, I said, can you please inform Jeffrey Wong that because I have to go up to, I guess, I'll just pick, I have to go up to Maybell Avenue. I know where that is. I know exactly where that is. And Dundas Street West. I have to go up there, or I have to go over to Park Lawn or something. Because of that, someone in that area will not be able to get food. Because the way our Daily Bread Food Bank works, and I know this, is that the geographical areas on the link to feed, that's why they tell you to get online and they give you a number and they go link to feed and you register because you're registering to be over in a certain area. And so you can't, so I said, so now someone is not going to be able to get food in that area because I have to go up there and I have to use their food. And then one police officer said, well, can't they come down here? I said, no, they can't. They can't come down here. It's not like I'm saying to somebody saying in line, oh, by the way, why don't you go down to 191 New Toronto Street because Jeffrey Wong and the Peoples and Cultures Department doesn't want me there. That's all it is. I said, call security. Security was sitting there watching Sandra Long and see what she was doing. When Sandra pulled into the parking lot, that's what they were doing. And then when because I saw Sandra Long pull into the parking lot behind me and park her car. And then when the police showed up, she skedaddled out of there, right? So, anyways, I thank you. I want a big shout out to Duranda Charlton, who gave me my food, Say Wong, who got the food ready from the kitchen, and to Duranda, who got the cart ready for me and the packages, which was really amazing. Thank you so very much. And I want a big shout out to Melindy, sorry I don't know your name, Sarah, and Caroline, Jessica, Augustina, and the rest of the kitchen crew, Randy, Atil, Etaton, as well, I said say already, and Charles Jurgel, and I want a big shout out over to Rob and Damien and Heather Valentino, Gretchen Daniels, and Lara Chancherio. I say your name wrong, I'm sorry. To Trevor, to O'Neill, the director of the Daily Bread Food Bank, to Tenzin Jiang. I'm sorry if I said your last name wrong. Who else over there? All the volunteers and everybody out there who I know volunteers. And I want a big shout out over to people in the finance department, people who work very tirelessly at the Daily Bread Food Bank, Kevin in the warehouse, and different volunteers in the warehouse and the drivers as well. And as well, I also want to thank the CEO, Mr. Hetherington, for all the work and all the hard work he does, tirelessly work, and for working like I pray for to eradicate food insecurity. It's not over, Jeffrey Wong.